They came with muskets, flags, and priests. They came with empires behind them, from the west, from the sea, from nations that believed every mountain could be conquered. But high in the Cordillera Mountains of northern Luzon, they met a people who refused to kneel. For over 500 years, the Igorot stood, barefoot on stone, spears in hand, proud in silence, while the world below them changed flags and masters. The Spanish called them infiles, unbelievers. The Americans called them headhunters. Yet neither empire could ever claim their land. How did a people, outnumbered, outgunned, and isolated in the clouds, resist every empire that set foot on their soil? And why did they never surrender when the rest of the islands fell? It begins long before the first Spanish sails cut across the horizon. Centuries before Magellan's Cross, the mountain tribes of Luzon were already builders, traders, and farmers. Their villages perched along ridges, wrapped in terraces carved by hand from living rock. The mountains were both fortress and lifeblood, a world of mist and ritual. Each village, Bontoc, Ifugao, Kalinga, Benguet, had its own rhythm, its own council of elders, its own gods that lived in the stones and rivers. They traded salt and copper with the lowlands, but rarely their loyalty. When outsiders came, they came as guests, not rulers. Then in 1572, the Spanish reached Luzon's northern coast. They had taken Manila. They had burned kingdoms. They believed these mountains would fall the same way. Governor Juan de Salcedo marched north with soldiers, muskets, and the banner of the crown. But as they climbed the slopes toward the Cordillera, fog swallowed the trails. The air thinned. Spears struck from unseen ridges. By night, fires flickered along cliffs where the soldiers could never reach. The conquistadors left with fewer men than they came. They wrote in their reports, "These mountains cannot be subdued." The Spanish tried again, year after year, governor after governor. They built missions at the edges of the range, hoping to lure the mountain people down with rice and silver. Some came, but most did not. In the valleys, Christianity spread. In the mountains, the gods stayed. When priests climbed up with crucifixes, they found rituals older than Rome. When soldiers marched with cannons, they found trails too narrow for wheels. The empire ruled the seas, but not the clouds. What they didn't know was that the Igorot had no single king to defeat. Each village was its own world, bound by honor, land, and kinship. If one fell, others would rise behind it. There was no capital to capture, no leader to kill, no throne to seize. The Spanish built forts at the mountain's base, but beyond them, the hills belonged to no one but the wind. By 1620, after nearly 50 years of campaigns, Spain admitted what no empire dared confess. There was a people they could not conquer. And yet, the Cordillera was far from peaceful. Tribal warfare continued, headhunting persisted, and feuds lasted generations. But within that violence was a code, the defense of honor, land, and kin. To outsiders, it looked savage. To them, it was survival. 2 centuries later, the world changed again. By 1898, the Americans arrived, fresh from their victory in the Spanish-American War. They came with engineers, missionaries, and cameras. They built roads into the mountains. They called the Igorot our little brothers, and displayed them at world fairs as curiosities of a lost age. But the mountains remembered. When the Americans raised their flag in the lowlands, they met quiet defiance in the highlands. In 1900, General Samuel Young led a campaign to civilize the North. He wrote that the Igorot could be made into loyal citizens with schools, Christianity, and trade. What he didn't know was that those same mountain passes had swallowed empires before him. Roads crumbled under landslides. soldiers vanished in the fog. Entire expeditions returned with nothing but stories of unseen drums beating through the night. And still, the Igorot farmed, traded, and built their terraces untouched. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of open war, the Americans tried something new: respect. They sent anthropologists like Dean Worcester, who studied and recorded the culture. They built schools where children learned both English and their native chants. And in time, some Igorot became soldiers, fighting alongside Americans in distant wars, not as conquered men, but as equals. Still, their independence was not forgotten. The mountains remained theirs. The roads stopped at their edge. In 1941, another empire arrived, the Japanese. The rest of the Philippines fell in months. Manila burned. Bataan surrendered. But in the Cordillera, the story was different. The Japanese marched up Benguet Road and met ambushes in every ravine. Villagers melted into the forest by day and returned by night to strike. By 1943, resistance in the north became one of the strongest guerrilla networks in the archipelago. American officers who had escaped capture fled to the mountains, and the Igorot took them in. On April 28, 1943, near Kiangan, Ifugao warriors led a raid on a Japanese outpost. Armed with only a handful of rifles and spears, they ambushed a convoy of trucks carrying supplies for the garrison at Banawe. 17 Japanese soldiers were killed. The Igorot lost 2. Among the fighters was a man named Juan Dulag, a farmer who had never seen a city. He carried his father's spear, 5 feet of sharpened rattan, and wore amulets carved from bone. For 2 years he fought in the mountains, hiding between rice terraces, guiding Allied scouts through terrain no map could capture. When the Americans returned in 1945, they said they couldn't have done it without the tribes who never surrendered. By the end of the war, the mountains stood untouched by occupation. For the 3rd time in history, an empire had reached the Cordillera and left empty-handed. But the price was heavy. Generations had grown up in isolation. When peace came, roads began to carve deeper into the hills. Mines were opened. Logging companies arrived. The terraces, some over 2,000 years old, began to crack and erode. And yet, the Igorot spirit did not fade. Their councils still gathered under the same trees. Their rituals still called to the ancestors with gongs and chants that echoed through the valleys. What the world didn't see was that their resistance had shifted from battlefields to identity. The enemy was no longer soldiers, but forgetting. In 1986, Igorot elders joined the People Power Revolution that overthrew a dictator. They marched to Manila carrying the same spears their ancestors once used in war. Not for conquest, but for remembrance. They demanded land rights, cultural recognition, and respect for ancestral domains. And slowly, the Philippines began to listen. By the 2000s, the rice terraces of Banawe were declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a living cultural landscape of unparalleled human creativity. Tourists came from around the world to see what bare hands and stubborn hearts had built. But to the Igorot, the terraces were not monuments. They were proof. Proof that their ancestors were never savages, never primitive, never conquered. They were builders of civilizations in the clouds. Today, you can walk the trails of the Cordillera and still hear echoes of that freedom. In Sagada, gongs ring across the cliffs. In Ifugao, children laugh among terraces that touch the clouds. And in every carved face of stone and wood, there is the same quiet defiance, the memory of 5 centuries of resistance. The Spanish failed. The Americans adapted. The Japanese retreated. No empire ever ruled the Cordillera. The Igorot never bowed, because they never believed they had to. They understood something that empires never did, that freedom does not come from conquest, but from belonging. To belong to the land, to one another, to memory itself. That was their empire, and that empire still stands.